played gigs every week, sometimes too many gigs, or sometimes just the right amount, or a couple, or whatever. And then all of a sudden I went to being in sort of forced hibernation, and so that was just weird.
That's the bassist Blake Eberhard. I'm Jamie Green, and this is Trading Fours. Hey everybody, and welcome back to episode 44 of Trading Fours. And I'm really excited to tell everybody that it's the 1-year anniversary of Trading Fours, so thank you to everyone who has been a guest on this podcast. I've had so many amazing, incredible conversations. Thank you so much for everybody who listens. It's been a real joy. You know, I know COVID's been a shitty year. It's not been fun, but this podcast has helped me a lot, and I hope it's doing the same for you. So today, I've got the bassist Blake Eberhard on. Blake is a super cool dude. As you can tell, man, he's a great bass player. And Blake is a native of Colorado who moved here this spring in April to be closer to family, and also that his wife is a native of Kansas City. And I'm guessing when they were planning this move, they were thinking, hey, Blake, you'll get there right this spring. It'll be great. You can start going to shows and start playing gigs and all of that. And as we know, the whole world's shut down. But Blake's a positive guy. He's kept his chin up, and he's actually doing some gigs this very weekend. So he's starting the process. But I wanted to have him on the podcast so people in Kansas City could get to know him. He's a really good player who's played with a ton of really good people. And we're going to talk all about this on this podcast. So let's get started. Happy anniversary to me. Here's my conversation with Blake Eberhard. Thanks so much for joining me. I think a good place to start is, I know you're a Coloradoan, and I know that you moved here. So when exactly did you move to Kansas City?
I moved out here at the beginning of April. So I've been here since April. It was right around the time that the coronavirus hit the country. And so, of course, that wasn't in the plan. But so I've been out here since then, got to enjoy the springtime and the summer here in Kansas City. And because of the COVID situation, my desire to come here and maybe introduce myself to the music community right away and maybe get some gigs and some contacts, there wasn't much happening. So that was a little frustrating.
Right.
So I have 2 gigs coming up this week, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to have a couple of gigs. That's awesome. Yeah. Not to mention talking to you today is also really awesome. So thank you.
That's great. So, you know, the whole reason why I do this, Blake, is to introduce people to musicians, mostly in town. Obviously, I do some national people too, because, you know, I'm not going to say no when a national person wants to talk. But
of course,
I like to talk to people here in town. And, you know, so much of what we do and so much of how we interact as musicians is either gigs if you're playing with another person, or just, you know, I like to go out and watch other people play too, and talk to somebody on a set break and make those kind of connections. And it's a whole part of your life that's just gone.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, after I moved here, there was a little bit of live music happening. My daughter lives nearby in Overland Park, and they had a little outdoor venue that had a weekly concert series. So I went out and saw a couple bands play, and I just kind of longing. You know, I had been playing bass for a long time, and I've been a full-time professional bass player. I haven't had any other vocation or job other than playing bass, teaching bass, live in studio work. And so I just to see these bands, maybe cover bands doing their thing, I pined for the days of playing gigs. And so I did, of course. I can't really help myself but come up and say hi and let them know I'm a musician with how much I enjoyed it and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, that's great. I'm probably done for the year because we played a couple weeks ago, and now it's literally snowing in Kansas City. And
yep, it's getting cold.
So I'm guessing until we get a vaccine or it warms up again, I'm probably done for the foreseeable future, which is, that'll be interesting. We'll see how I handle that, you know?
Yeah. Well, and for me, again, it was weird that I played gigs every week, sometimes too many gigs, or sometimes just the right amount, or a couple, or whatever. And then all of a sudden, I went to being in sort of forced hibernation, and so that was just weird.
Yeah. It's strange for everybody. Well,
Yeah.
let's back up a little bit because I think it's always interesting where people start. And I obviously I looked at your bio on your website, and we'll obviously have that in the show notes so people can click on it and see
Awesome.
what you've been doing and stuff. But I'm always so you obviously started bass early. I know that was part of your bio, but so when you were starting out, Blake, who did you listen to and thought, man, I love how they play bass, and I'd love to do that?
Well, that's a great question. So I played trombone during grade school, middle school.
Me
And
too, dude.
that's awesome. And I'd say around sometime around being 13 years old or thereabouts, I kind of became aware of rock and rock bands, and reading the album covers and seeing who was doing what. My older brother is a musician and a guitar player. And so he was a couple years older than me. So maybe when I'm 13, 14, I really liked the rock that was on the radio, and this kind of the same rock music that most of my friends and peers liked. My brother was into jazz fusion, and he liked Larry Carlton and Lee Ritenour and the Crusaders, and he listened to Joe Pass and George
Oh yeah.
Benson and a lot of instrumental music. And so like a lot of young teens, I kind of liked the popular rock a little more, and maybe hadn't developed the taste for instrumental jazz fusion quite as much
Yeah.
initially. But so I recognized that some of these musicians were really inspiring and awesome. So when I started playing bass when I was 14, and in addition to playing the rock that was popular, and also gravitating toward the really good rock bass players like Chris Squire from Yes or
Yeah.
Geddy Lee, I kind of recognized when certain bass players had a little something artistic to deliver. I really loved Jocko and
Yeah.
Stanley Clark, and these were some of the bass pioneers back then, and there are more now in the industry. There are more bass virtuosos, but back then I would say listening to Return to Forever with Stanley Clark, wow, that was a real big deal for me.
Yeah.
And Jocko, but and so I played a lot of jazz, and right away, like when I was 14, 15, I played in an 18-piece big band that was mostly kind of a youth big band full of really good players. So I played a lot of jazz, and I still play jazz, but I don't only love jazz. I like all kinds of music, and I really like rock and hard rock, and it's kind of, for me, that's my palette is pretty diverse.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I think you have to have that. I have all my jazz albums, and I certainly, I was listening to Jazz Messengers this weekend, and there's so many great players and stuff. But yeah, sometimes I just want to have a nice, perfectly crafted rock song. I don't, give me three chords and a 1-4-5, progression. I don't want a 2-5-1 and a tritone sub, and I don't want to think that hard, Blake. I just want to rock out. So
Totally understand, and I know a lot of musicians, and I love jazz very much. Of course, I've been to the Jazz History Museum here in Kansas City.
yep.
It just that was a moving experience for me to observe and behold the things in the museum, and I have played a lot of jazz, and so I love it very much. But I also uh, like heavy metal, and I've toured with metal bands, and I've played calypso and reggae music and country, and so I just like good music and great playing. And some of my friends and colleagues only like jazz, so they're not really interested in listening to jazz, or they would never listen to Testament or Tool or Disturbed or these kinds of, they would think that's really atrocious. And I really just dig the great playing and energy that in different kinds of music. So
Yeah.
I love jazz, but I don't only love jazz.
No, I'm right there with you. I think that, you close your mind off to things, it's not a good thing. And I love my dad dearly. But he thought like all good music ended about 1955. And I always felt like he just really shut himself out of so much stuff that I try very, very hard not to just say, I'm not going to listen to that, or, oh, I don't, I try very hard to at least listen to it and see what I think of
Sure.
it first, because I just think it's important. And I also think as a musician, and it's just a hobby for me, but I think it's really important to have an open mind and an open heart, because if you want to grow as a musician, you have to have that internally, that you have to want to grow. Because if you just say, nah, and I'm just doing this and that's it, that you could get real stagnant real quick. At least I think so.
Well, I agree with you, and so I kind of even see that that helps me to be open to just appreciate the quality of artistry and musicianship with different bands. It may not be maybe my favorite kind of music or whatnot, but as I get older, I find that it's easier to appreciate what different people have going on, or maybe appreciate things that when I was younger, I wasn't that interested in, or this kind of thing.
Yeah. My older son's way into music, so I try to listen to what he's listening to, because I'm curious.
Sure.
Because I certainly am not going to find it on my own.
Absolutely. And I think that there's so much music in the world nowadays and so many artists that, boy, it's nearly impossible to know every artist out there and every song. And so there's just a lot.
Yeah.
So sometimes other people know a great amount of artists and music in a certain genre that might have eluded me or whatnot. And I've been teaching private bass lessons for decades now. And this was an awesome thing that students would come in with, usually what was really popular at that time.
Right.
And it helped expose me to a lot of songs that I otherwise maybe wouldn't have sought out on my own.
Yeah.
So that was a great thing about teaching, is familiarizing myself with a bunch of new music while I help the student learn it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's just fun too. I've got a couple students, when they just bring you something, and I've had students that are younger that bring me, Taylor Swift or something, which is fine. It's their generation, it's their music.
Sure.
But I just had a kid recently who is like way into AC/DC. And just to revisit Back in Black, like the entire album, obviously I'd heard it a million times and had played some of it, but I hadn't played it forever or thought about it. And I was like, this is a great album.
Absolutely.
Right? You just forget about that kind of stuff. So, well, I have a million questions to ask, but I want to be cognizant of your time and stuff. So there's so much to ask, but I want to talk about you and Dr. John and Japan. Because we just lost Dr. John not that long ago, and a year or two ago, and fabulous player. I mean, just so much fun. And he was on the TV show, the David Simon HBO show, Treme, and did not play himself, played kind of a version of himself. And he was fabulous. Was there anybody who had the most interesting turn of phrase, how he would talk about something? It was like its own language. He wouldn't talk. Anyway, I would highly recommend, if people have not watched Treme on HBO, and we're all going to be sitting home for months now, totally take, there's tons of great players on there. Kermit Ruffins is on there, and a bunch of other guys that are New Orleans guys. But so tell me about, how did this all come together?
So I enjoyed doing studio work very much, and I was fortunate to get calls to do studio work in Denver for a variety of artist projects and maybe jingle work and things like this. Dr. John had a girlfriend in Denver, so he was staying with her. And he was hired to do a cover of Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone, a full-length version in the style of Dr. John. And it was being produced by some Japanese producers and would be used as I believe, a Hyundai auto commercial, or I don't remember, Toyota maybe. I can't remember which car brand it was, but they were going to use this in their ad. So he didn't want to fly back to the East or West Coast. He said, find players in a studio in Denver to do this. So I just got the call to do this one-time recording with Dr. John. And so that's kind of what happened there. And as a typical situation, I got paid my studio rate and an agreed upon flat fee to do this song. And of course, it was fun to meet him. This song ended up being a #1 hit single in Japan. So we found out later. And otherwise, that was part of a 60-second commercial. So it was just a one-time event for me to meet Dr. John, but something that I thought was really cool
Yeah.
was one of the other musicians on the session told him, "Hey man, I love this album, from whatever year it was, and I really like this." And Dr. John said, "Ah, hell man, I don't remember any of that from back then." And he was just really easygoing. And then, of course, me, maybe a couple of the guys, "Hey, it's really an honor to meet you and work with you." And he said, "Oh hell, man, it ain't nothing like that. We all just here to make a little bit of money." And
That's
he was
awesome.
just really down to earth and really cool. He didn't want to receive accolades or a big deal to be made. He was just very cool. And so we did 3 takes of the song, and he said, "I don't know why they're making us do a third take. They're going to use the second take." And sure enough, they used the second take. So that was cool. That's my Dr. John story.
That's awesome, man. So you're like, did you guys record it in real time at the same time? Everybody did their part?
We did this crew, these 3 young Japanese men who barely spoke English at all.
Right.
Were producing this, and they had a demo of how they wanted it to be, and they had a little breakdown section with kind of the typical New Orleans second line groove, and uh, it was just kind of charming, just having them try to tell Dr. John what they wanted him to do, which is what he would have done anyway. And
Yeah.
so yeah, we recorded that, and I came in and did my basic tracks with some of the rhythm section, and then left as they finished it up later. But I do have a CD of the finished recording of it, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I want to hear that.
All right, be happy to.
Yeah, make me a copy.
All right.
That's fabulous. Well, there's a lot of people, I don't know that people know this, that famous people, whether they're musicians or actors or whatever, that won't do commercials in the United States because they don't want to have that kind of like, hey, they're schlepping.
I sold out and did a commercial.
Right. But they do these in Japan or Germany or wherever. I mean, there's a ton of that. So it's interesting that he did that, but what a character. That's so cool and stuff. So Colorado, obviously Blake is known for a lot of things, not only the beautiful scenery and the stuff, but I think that a lot of people, when they think Colorado music, one of the first things that's going to pop into their head is a John Denver tune.
Yeah.
And obviously John was, it's funny with stuff like at the time in the 70s and stuff, and some people were like, oh, he's too earnest or he's too, whatever. But as time has gone on, I think that kind of that love of John Denver and his music and his talent and stuff has really, I think people have really embraced it. So
Absolutely.
I'm kind of curious. I know that you worked a little bit with him too. So how would that go? And what was the story behind that?
Well, I played with him maybe 3 different times, and it was usually not something planned. Maybe he was headlining an event, and I have a couple stories, but one, I was playing a corporate or a gala fundraiser event, and he just happened to be there as a guest. And the people organizing the event asked if he would come up and sit in and do a couple songs. So he said, sure. And I was more than happy to step aside and say, here's my mic, and here you can use this mic. And he goes, well, let's play Colorado Rocky Mountain High. And okay. So I'll just kind of fake through that. And it was awesome to be standing there with John Denver. Nobody sounds like him except him. And then the second song we did, he's turned to us. He goes, well, this is a song you don't know, but it's in G and it goes like this. And he just taught us the song kind of on the spot. And so that was really cool. I've done some gigs with people that worked with John Denver. And I know the gentleman who was his pilot who flew him around for many years. And of course, John Denver developed a love of flying planes and tragically died flying an experimental plane.
Yeah.
So I know this man, and he knows a lot about John Denver and was good friends with him. And I kind of learned that John Denver became famous, and he just considered himself kind of a hippie songwriter.
Yeah.
And he became famous and very successful. And he writes some great songs. And I have friends who are in there's a musical adaptation about John Denver's life and a lot of his songs. And that's just some great music. So I just had the occasion to be at some different gigs that he was at and get to meet him and talk with him and to play with him a couple times. Very cool.
Yeah, and I think we're similar age. I think you're just a couple years older than me, but John Denver was a huge deal. I mean, he was the Oh God movie.
Oh God, George Burns, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was everywhere. He was a big deal, and I don't think the younger generation probably understands that. And Annie's song is one of the most beautiful love songs you can think of. I mean, that's a gorgeous song.
It is
Whatever.
so beautiful. I babysat a wedding ceremony, and the bride's family asked, they knew John Denver's mom, and he didn't want to do this ceremony, but he agreed to do it because his mom told him he needed to do it. So he performed Annie's song singing on his 12 string for the wedding ceremony, and borrowed my guitar tuner so he could tune up his 12 string and sing that song. And what a lovely experience to hear him sing that. And it's just, he had a very unique sounding voice, and there's nobody like him except him. And so that was just a really fun moment for me to let him use my tuner and have him perform the song.
Absolutely. Well, I know, let's talk a little bit. You said you're gigging this week, and this is going to go up it's going up on Halloween. So Blake, you're officially my 1-year anniversary show. So congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
So tell me what these gigs are.
I will. I just got to, if I can't really turn my computer around because it's all wired in. And if I did, I'm looking out my studio window into the woods. So the back of my house is in the woods, and there are 2 white-tailed deer standing there right in the snow, and it's very beautiful. You'll just have to picture it. Yeah. So anyway, that's pretty cool. So I met somebody here in town who's part of an entertainment agency, or they do a lot of the gigs that I did in Denver were playing weddings and corporate dance jobs and gala fundraiser gigs and that kind of thing. So I've got a wedding gig here in Kansas City this Saturday. And so it's not a costume party gig either. It's just a regular.
So they're getting married on Halloween.
Yeah, they're getting married on Halloween. So I told my wife, Halloween's not, if it's not scary enough, they're getting married that day. So
I literally almost did a spit take. You said that while I was drinking water. That's funny. And so, what's their first song, Blake? What's their wedding song going to be? I'm always curious.
Well, and these are young people, of course. And so a lot of the young brides and grooms now, they like and gravitate toward the current music and the recent music. But their first song is "I Can't Help Falling in Love with You," as done by Elvis. So,
that's awesome.
Yep.
That should be a question I should ask everybody. What was your wedding song? I haven't thought about that, but
and so I've certainly performed. A lot of the songs are a common choice, so it kind of depends. Maybe sometimes the bride and groom have a favorite song that they like to listen to, but I think "What a Wonderful World" by Louis Armstrong is on there also.
A lot.
And here's an important trivia piece of knowledge, that as famous of a song as that is, "What a Wonderful World," the bass player on that track is the wonderful Chuck Rainey, who played on most of the Steely Dan tracks and Aretha Franklin. And so Chuck was the bass player on "What a Wonderful World," which I think is pretty cool.
That's very cool. Well, that's going to be fun for you to get up and play again and stuff. And, one of the things I wanted to do and why I wanted to have you on is because, fingers crossed, COVID can't go on forever. So let's say that, we get a vaccine soon and we're able to go and play gigs in the normal way. So what would your ideal be in 2021? What would you like to do?
Well, that's a great question. And I also hope that we can kind of return to some sense of normalcy. One of the types of gigs I enjoyed doing in Denver was playing musical theater, and Denver has a very nice performing arts complex, kind of like the Kaufman Center here. So I enjoy doing this kind of work. I have friends that are in Hamilton on Broadway and are Broadway actors and actresses. And of course, there's nothing happening right now.
No.
So they're just gutted to have no work happening. So I would love to be able to introduce myself to that community, because those are fun gigs. And I like playing a variety of music. And so I just hope to have a couple bands that I could have some semi-regular work with, and maybe get a teaching practice going again. I've been teaching for a long, long time. And whereas pretty much every guitar teacher, there is also teach bass. That's pretty common. They'll have bass students and guitar students. I've only taught bass the whole time I've been doing it. Upright bass, jazz and classical orchestra stuff, and then mostly just popular styles on electric bass. So I would love to kind of get back into a teaching practice and just having regular gigs again, uh, almost no matter what it was, if it was concert gigs or playing in a club or whatever it could be.
Yeah. And I'm looking at your website, and it's bebass.com. And so you can find out if you're interested with Blake about, you can hire him for a session. If you need somebody to do some recording, you can hire him as your kid or yourself's bass teacher.
Yeah, that's me. Bebass.com. That's my initials, by the way.
Yeah. So
and my logo, which is the B and E flat, and so that was pretty slick, I think.
Yeah. So
if somebody wants to contact me, my telephone number is on the website. So please feel free to contact me.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think how many bass players I've had on. 2 or 3. I had Hadrian Ferrard on, which was
awesome. Yeah.
He's ridiculous, and he's 32. It's annoying. But I'm always give me a name of a bass player that everybody should know, but only bass players know.
Well, there are a few. And people ask me a lot, I'll get who's my favorite bass player, which is hard to answer because I have several favorites, or who's the best. And that's also impossible to answer because there are men and women who are phenomenal musicians in all different genres. But so I guess I'll throw out there Marcus Miller as one of my favorite bass players, and he's a multi-Grammy winner. Most people wouldn't know who Marcus Miller is, but he's just an icon of bass. And so most all bass players know who Marcus is, and most people wouldn't know who that is, I would say.
Right.
I could go on and list others, but he's one of my favorites.
Yeah. And tell people who, I mean, I know who Marcus Miller is, but like, what's a track that he's played on that people probably would know? Do you have one?
Gosh, I mean, he played with David Sanborn and Dave Grusin, who are some jazz legends, and he has won a lot of Grammys with his own music.
Right.
So that's a little hard to say, which he's played on so many tracks and a lot of pop music also.
Who was the dude that played the fretless bass on, I Wish It Would Rain Down, the Phil Collins song where...
I would guess that's Pino Palladino.
I think you're right.
British fretless icon who played on Paul Young's stuff, and he's the bassist who stepped in when John Entwistle died on tour. They had Pino Palladino come in to complete the tour, so he's a real icon of bass also.
Right. So last thing, I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to ask because, you're talking about guitar player or bass players that only bass players know. And, it's interesting with the guitar players. We have people that we know how good they are, but they're known in a different way. And, I think most people think of Vince Gill because of his singing and a little bit of his songwriting, and probably because he's married to Amy Grant. But and it's my podcast, so I'll curse. God damn, that guy's a phenomenal guitar player. And I know you got to, did you meet him or play with him? What was it? What'd you do?
A couple years ago, I played a concert at one of Denver's largest outdoor amphitheaters, and it was a Colorado Music Hall of Fame show to honor Dan Fogelberg. The late Dan Fogelberg was a Colorado guy. And in order to raise funds for prostate cancer research, and Dan Fogelberg died of prostate cancer, an album was made with Vince Gill, Amy Grant, Garth Brooks, Zach Brown Band, and a slew of other artists, Train. So all these people contributed a song. Some of those artists came and performed live at this show. So I got to play with Garth Brooks and Vince and Amy and Nitty Gritty Dirt Band and a few other well-known artists. And so that included a little bit of a rehearsal process and getting to perform. So for me, that was a career highlight.
Yeah.
And Vince Gill, as you could imagine, is such a nice person. He won't say no if you want a selfie taken or an autograph. And he's a big, tall guy. He's very nice and very kind. And I got to hang out with him and Amy Grant all afternoon and have a meal with them and talk with them. And he said, I won't play guitar on this show. I'll just sing. But on the last number, which was everybody came out on stage and there was about 50 people on stage. And of course he picked up a Strat and played, and he's just an unbelievably good player.
Yeah.
And this week they just released this new Eagles album where they played live at the LA Stadium with Deacon Fry on guitar and singing Glenn Fry's parts, and also Vince. So you can tell when Vince is singing and playing, and what an asset for the Eagles to bring him on board. That's for sure. Yeah. He is a phenomenal guitar player, and everybody just wants to know what's in Vince's pedal board rig and what kind of guitar is he playing. And yeah, he's super good. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's funny because, like I said, it's just every guitar player I know will tell you how great Vince is. And, I couldn't tell you one of his hits, but I sure could tell you how much I've enjoyed watching it and hearing him play guitar. Cause but it kind of annoys my wife sometimes because she'll be like, what are the lyrics? And I was like, I don't know what the lyrics are to this song.
Well, I would also say I wouldn't know a lot of Keith Urban's songs necessarily, but my wife and I got free tickets to go see Keith Urban, and he is a phenomenally good guitar player.
Yeah.
So it was, I already had heard that and I kind of knew that, but I got to see it in person, and he's a real shredder. That's for sure.
Yeah. People don't get that, but certainly I'm aware. So Blake, it's been great to meet. Welcome to Kansas City. It's been such a weird year, and I wish it was under better circumstances, but I'm hoping that we're going to turn the corner, and I appreciate the time.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for your time, Jamie.
Yeah, man. Take care. It's been a joy to meet you. Have a good day.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Bye-bye.
How does it feel? Like a rolling stone.
Thanks to Blake Eberhard, and hey, we found it. This is the Dr. John track, the Bob Dylan cover of How Does It Feel, with Blake on bass, which was a #1 hit in Japan. How crazy is that? So, thanks to Blake. Be sure to check out in the show notes. I've got his website up there, and check him out. And let's get him a part of this Kansas City music community. I know most of the people in the Kansas City music community are super friendly and welcoming, and I have no doubt that Blake will make friends soon and get involved real soon. So that's it for today's Trading Force. I can't believe it's taken this long, but for season 2, I finally have a saxophone player on, a saxophonist. Nick May's going to join us. And I apologize to all you wind instrument folks that it took me a year to get somebody on, but it is kind of unconscionable that in the city that Charlie Parker's from, born and raised, that I'm just now getting a saxophone player on. But we're going to make up for that. Nick is a great player, super cool guy, and he's a fellow Husker, so we've got a lot to chat about. So that'll be on next time, probably in about a week to 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that. Got a lot going on with the day job, but I'll get it up as soon as I can. So that's it. Go out and enjoy live music, either virtually or in person. A very happy Halloween, and I'll talk to you real soon.
Nobody ever taught you how to live on the street. Now you find out you're gonna have to get used to it. You say you never compromise with the mystery train, but now you realize he's not selling any alibis. As you stare into the vacuum of his eyes, asking, do you want to make a deal? How does it feel? How does it feel to be on your own with no direction home, like a complete unknown? Like a rolling stone. exchanging all kind of precious gifts and things. You better lift your diamond ring, you better pawn it, babe. You used to be so amused at Napoleon and Ray and the language that he used. Go to him now, he calls you can't refuse. When you ain't got nothing, you ain't got nothing to lose. You invisible now, you got no secret to conceal. Like a rolling stone, how does it feel to be on your own with no direction home? Like a